Eliza Blackwood sat at her desk, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across her study. The room was cluttered with books and papers, the detritus of a historian's life. She stared at the old leather-bound diary she had found among her late mother's belongings, its pages yellowed with age and filled with cryptic symbols and text. The diary had captivated her since she discovered it a week ago, but today, she felt a strange urgency to delve deeper. Eliza traced her fingers over the faded ink, her heart racing with anticipation. The diary hinted at a dark family secret, one that her mother, Margaret, had taken to her grave. Margaret Blackwood had been an enigma, a woman of many secrets, and her untimely death had left Eliza with more questions than answers. But now, she had a chance to uncover the truth. "What secrets did you hide, Mother?" Eliza whispered to the silent room. As she turned the pages, a folded piece of parchment fell out. It was a map, detailed and meticulously drawn, showing the layout of Edinburgh's underground vaults. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. The map pointed to a hidden chamber, a place she had never seen mentioned in any of her historical research. "What did you find down there?" she wondered aloud. The idea of exploring the vaults thrilled and terrified her. The underground city beneath Edinburgh was a maze of tunnels and chambers, abandoned and forgotten by most. It was a place of shadows and whispers, where the past refused to stay buried. Determined to uncover her mother's secret, Eliza decided to seek help from her mentor, Dr. James McAllister. An expert in Edinburgh's history, he had always been a skeptic when it came to supernatural tales, but his knowledge of the city's hidden depths was unparalleled. That evening, Eliza visited Dr. McAllister at his modest flat. The old historian greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Ah, Eliza, what brings you here at this hour?" he asked, ushering her inside. "I've found something," she said, handing him the diary and the map. "It was my mother's. It points to a hidden chamber in the vaults." Dr. McAllister examined the diary and map with keen interest. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Margaret was always one for secrets. This map, it leads to a place I've never heard of. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" Eliza nodded, her resolve firm. "I need to know what she found. Will you help me?" "Of course," he replied. "But be careful, Eliza. The vaults are dangerous, and not just because of their age. There are stories." "I've heard the stories," she interrupted. "But I have to do this." Dr. McAllister sighed, sensing her determination. "Very well. We'll go tomorrow. Prepare yourself. It won't be an easy journey." Eliza spent the night in restless anticipation. Her mind raced with thoughts of what she might find in the vaults. The diary's cryptic entries suggested her mother had discovered something significant, something she had deemed too dangerous to share. As dawn broke, Eliza packed her equipment, a flashlight, rope, and a small journal to document her findings. She felt a mix of excitement and dread, but her curiosity outweighed her fear. She met Dr. McAllister at the entrance to the vaults. The old stone archway loomed before them, shrouded in shadows. The air was damp and cold, sending a shiver down her spine. "Ready?" Dr. McAllister asked, his voice echoing in the narrow passage. Eliza nodded, gripping her flashlight. "Let's go." They descended into the darkness, the city above quickly fading away. The vaults were a labyrinth of narrow corridors and ancient rooms, each step taking them deeper into the past. The air grew colder, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps. Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as they followed the map, each turn bringing them closer to the hidden chamber. She felt the weight of history pressing down on her, the whispers of the past growing louder in her mind. Finally, they reached a heavy wooden door, its surface covered in strange symbols. Eliza's hands trembled as she pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. In the center of the room stood an altar, covered in dust. Ancient books and artifacts were scattered around, their significance lost to time. But it was the sight of a portrait that caught Eliza's eye, a painting of her mother, younger and full of life, holding a mysterious amulet. "What is this place?" Eliza breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. McAllister stepped forward, his expression grave. "This, Eliza, is where your mother's secret begins. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the magnitude of her discovery. Her journey into the past had only just begun, and the answers she sought lay hidden in the shadows of Edinburgh's underground. The small chamber was filled with a thick, oppressive silence, broken only by the soft rustle of Eliza's movements. She approached the altar cautiously, her eyes fixed on the portrait of her mother. The amulet in the painting seemed to glow with an eerie light, drawing her in. "Look at this," she said, pointing to the amulet. "Do you recognize it, Dr. McAllister?" The old historian squinted at the painting, then shook his head. "No, but it's certainly peculiar. It might be an artifact linked to some ancient rituals. We'll need to examine it closely." Eliza nodded, her curiosity piqued. She gently lifted the painting, revealing a hidden compartment in the altar. Inside lay a small box, intricately carved with the same symbols that adorned the door. Her hands trembled as she opened it, revealing the amulet from the painting. "It's real," she whispered, holding it up to the dim light. The amulet was made of a dark, polished stone, inscribed with unfamiliar runes. It felt cold and heavy in her hand, pulsing with a strange energy. "What do you think it means?" Eliza asked, turning to Dr. McAllister. He examined the amulet closely, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This is no ordinary trinket. It's imbued with some sort of power. We need to be cautious. There's a reason your mother kept this hidden." Eliza felt a shiver of apprehension, but knew she couldn't turn back now. "We need to find out more. The diary might have clues about how to use this." They returned to Eliza's study, the amulet carefully wrapped and stored in her bag. The journey back through the vaults was uneventful, but the sense of unease lingered. Eliza's mind raced with questions as they emerged into the daylight, the ancient city above them feeling strangely distant. Back in the familiar surroundings of her study, Eliza and Dr. McAllister pored over the diary, searching for any mention of the amulet. The entries were filled with cryptic references and coded language, making it difficult to decipher. "Here," Dr. McAllister said, pointing to a passage. "Your mother wrote about a ritual. She believed the amulet could unlock something powerful, something dangerous." Eliza read the passage, her heart pounding. The ritual required a specific location and a series of incantations, all detailed in her mother's meticulous handwriting. The location was another chamber, deeper within the vaults. "This is it," Eliza said, her voice filled with determination. "We need to perform the ritual. It's the only way to understand what my mother found." Dr. McAllister hesitated, his face etched with concern. "Eliza, are you sure? This could be incredibly dangerous." "I know," she replied, meeting his gaze. "But I have to do this. I need to know the truth." The old historian sighed, nodding reluctantly. "Very well. We'll prepare and go tomorrow. But we must be careful." Eliza spent the night preparing for the journey. She packed additional supplies, including a journal to document her findings, and carefully studied the diary's instructions. The weight of the amulet in her bag felt both comforting and ominous, a reminder of the task ahead. As dawn broke, Eliza felt a renewed sense of purpose. She met Dr. McAllister at the entrance to the vaults, their resolve mirrored in each other's eyes. "Ready?" he asked, his voice steady. "Ready," she replied, gripping her flashlight. They descended once more into the darkness, the map guiding them to the chamber where the ritual would take place. The air grew colder, the silence more profound, as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. Eliza's heart raced with anticipation and fear. The answers she sought were within reach, but the cost of uncovering them remained unknown. As they approached the designated chamber, she steeled herself for whatever lay ahead, determined to uncover the secrets of the past, no matter the danger. The entrance to the deeper vaults was hidden behind a heavy iron door, half concealed by the crumbling stone walls. Eliza and Dr. McAllister stood before it, the weight of their task pressing down on them. "This must be it," Dr. McAllister said, glancing at the map and then back at the door. The diary mentioned an iron door with these exact markings. Eliza nodded, her fingers tracing the worn symbols etched into the metal. The door was ancient, its surface cold and unyielding. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay beyond. "Let's do this," she said, pushing against the door. It creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow, dimly lit passage. The air inside was damp and musty, the walls slick with moisture. As they ventured deeper, the light from their flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance and writhe in the darkness. The silence was thick and oppressive, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. "This place feels different," Eliza whispered, her voice barely audible. "More ancient, more sinister." Dr. McAllister nodded. "These deeper vaults were sealed off for a reason. We must tread carefully." The passage twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the earth. The further they went, the colder it became, the air growing thin and difficult to breathe. Eliza felt a chill run down her spine, a sense of being watched. Finally, they reached the chamber indicated on the map. It was larger than the previous one, with high ceilings and walls lined with shelves of old books and artifacts. In the center stood an altar similar to the one they had found before, but this one was covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. "This is it," Eliza said, stepping forward. "This is where we'll perform the ritual." Dr. McAllister set down his bag and began unpacking the necessary items: candles, a small brazier, and a book of ancient incantations. Eliza retrieved the amulet, feeling its cold weight in her hand once more. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. McAllister asked, his eyes filled with concern. "There's still time to turn back." Eliza shook her head, her resolve firm. "I need to know what my mother found. I need to understand why she did this." With a sigh, Dr. McAllister nodded and began arranging the items on the altar. Eliza lit the candles, their flickering light casting long shadows across the room. She opened the diary to the page detailing the ritual, her heart pounding in her chest. "Let's begin," she said, taking a deep breath. Dr. McAllister started chanting the incantations, his voice steady and measured. Eliza placed the amulet on the altar and joined him, her voice trembling but growing stronger with each word. The air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an unseen energy. As they chanted, the amulet began to glow, a soft, eerie light emanating from its surface. The room grew colder, and Eliza felt a presence, an unseen force watching them. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shook, and the candles flickered wildly. Eliza's heart raced, but she continued chanting, her voice rising above the chaos. The amulet pulsed with light, and she felt a surge of energy, a connection to something ancient and powerful. With a final, resounding chant, the room fell silent. The light from the amulet faded, and the oppressive presence seemed to lift. Eliza and Dr. McAllister stood in the dim light, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Did it work?" Eliza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. McAllister nodded slowly. "I think so, but we've only just begun to uncover the truth. There's more to this than we realize." Eliza felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The ritual was only the first step in their journey. The secrets of the past were beginning to reveal themselves, but the danger was far from over. As they stood in the silent chamber, the weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air. Eliza's heart still pounded from the ritual, the lingering sense of unease refusing to dissipate. "We should document everything," Eliza said, pulling out her journal. "Every detail could be crucial." Dr. McAllister nodded, still catching his breath. "Agreed, but we must also remain vigilant. I fear this is only the beginning." They meticulously noted the symbols, the layout of the chamber, and their experience during the ritual. The amulet, now devoid of its eerie glow, lay quietly on the altar. As Eliza wrote, she felt the room grow colder, the shadows seeming to deepen. "Do you feel that?" she asked, looking up. "It's getting colder." Dr. McAllister glanced around, his expression tense. "Yes, it's as if something is watching us." A sudden, chilling whisper echoed through the chamber, sending a shiver down Eliza's spine. She turned, her flashlight sweeping across the room, but saw nothing. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," Dr. McAllister replied, his eyes wide with fear. "We need to leave. Now." They hurriedly packed their belongings, the oppressive atmosphere growing more intense with each passing moment. As they made their way back through the passage, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Who's there?" Eliza called out, her voice echoing off the stone walls. There was no response, only the relentless whispering that seemed to come from all directions. They quickened their pace, the sense of being followed becoming unbearable. Eliza's mind raced, the fear of the unknown gnawing at her resolve. Just as they reached the iron door, a shadowy figure appeared at the edge of her vision. "Run!" Dr. McAllister shouted, pushing the door open with a frantic urgency. They stumbled through, slamming it shut behind them. The whispers ceased abruptly, leaving them in a tense, breathless silence. "What was that?" Eliza gasped, leaning against the cold stone wall. "I don't know," Dr. McAllister replied, his face pale. "But whatever it was, it's connected to the amulet. We need to be extremely careful." Eliza nodded, her mind racing. The encounter had shaken her, but it also fueled her determination. The presence they had felt was not just a figment of their imagination. It was real, and it was tied to her mother's secret. "We need to find out more about this amulet," she said, her voice steadying. "There must be something in the diary or other historical texts that can help us understand what we're dealing with." Back in her study, Eliza and Dr. McAllister pored over the diary and other books, searching for any clues. The hours passed in tense silence, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. Finally, Eliza found a passage in an old text that seemed relevant. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud. "The Amulet of Shadows, a relic of ancient power, said to bind the spirits of the dead to this realm. It was used in rituals to communicate with the other side, but its power is dangerous, and those who seek to control it risk unleashing great evil." Dr. McAllister frowned. "If that's true, your mother might have been trying to communicate with someone or something from the other side. But why?" Eliza shook her head, her thoughts swirling. "I don't know, but we need to find out. If the amulet is truly this powerful, we have to understand its history and how to control it." Their research continued late into the night, the fear of the unknown overshadowed by their determination to uncover the truth. Eliza felt a growing sense of urgency, the whispers and shadowy figure haunting her thoughts. As dawn approached, they finally set their books aside, exhausted but resolute. The journey into the past had revealed only a fraction of its secrets, and the true danger still lay ahead. But Eliza knew one thing for certain. She would stop at nothing to uncover the truth and lay the spirits of the past to rest. The morning light filtered weakly through the windows of Eliza's study, casting long shadows across the room. Eliza and Dr. McAllister had barely slept, their minds racing with the implications of their discovery. "Eliza, we need to be cautious," Dr. McAllister said, his voice tinged with concern. "If the amulet is as powerful as the text suggests, it could be incredibly dangerous." Eliza nodded, her eyes tired but determined. "I understand, but we need to find out why my mother had it and what she intended to do with it. There has to be more in the diary." They resumed their search, poring over the faded pages of the diary and cross-referencing other historical texts. As they worked, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the memory of the shadowy figure lingering in her mind. Hours passed, and finally, Eliza found a passage that caught her attention. "Here," she said, pointing to a page. "My mother wrote about a specific ritual she performed. She believed it would allow her to communicate with a lost soul, someone who died under mysterious circumstances." Dr. McAllister leaned in, reading the passage over her shoulder. "She mentions the name Isabella. Do you know who that is?" Eliza shook her head. "I've never heard of an Isabella in our family, but it sounds like this person was important to my mother." They continued reading, and a clearer picture began to emerge. Margaret Blackwood had been obsessed with uncovering the truth about Isabella's death. She believed the amulet held the key to communicating with Isabella's spirit, but the ritual had gone wrong, unleashing a malevolent force instead. "Isabella must have been someone close to her," Eliza mused. "But why would she go to such lengths to communicate with her?" Dr. McAllister frowned. "It's possible Isabella's death was not a natural one. Your mother might have been seeking justice or closure." Eliza's mind raced with possibilities. "We need to find out who Isabella was and what happened to her. If we can understand that, we might be able to undo whatever my mother did." Their research led them to old family records and archives. They spent days combing through dusty ledgers and faded photographs, piecing together the story of Isabella. She had been a distant relative, a young woman who had lived in Edinburgh in the late 1800s. Her death had been sudden and mysterious, officially recorded as an accident, but rumors of foul play had persisted. "Eliza, look at this," Dr. McAllister said, holding up an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Tragic Death of Young Socialite Isabella Blackwood." The article detailed her untimely death and the rumors of a scandal that had rocked the family. "She was only 20, Eliza said, her voice filled with sadness. "My mother must have been haunted by her death." They found more references to Isabella in the diary, including notes about the locations she frequented and the people she associated with. One name stood out, Alexander Fraser, a close friend of Isabella's who had been implicated in the rumors surrounding her death. "We need to find out more about Alexander Fraser," Eliza said. "If he was involved in Isabella's death, he might hold the key to understanding what happened." As they dug deeper, Eliza felt her resolve strengthening. The more they uncovered, the more she realized how much her mother had sacrificed in her quest for the truth. But with each revelation, the sense of danger grew. The malevolent force they had encountered in the vaults was linked to Isabella's death, and Eliza knew they were treading on dangerous ground. "We need to be prepared," Dr. McAllister warned. "The closer we get to the truth, the more dangerous this will become." Eliza nodded, her determination unwavering. "I won't stop until I've uncovered the whole truth. My mother deserves that much." They continued their investigation, driven by the desire to lay the past to rest and free themselves from the shadows that haunted them. The journey was far from over, but Eliza knew they were getting closer to the answers they sought. And with each step, the stakes grew higher, the danger more imminent. But Eliza was ready to face whatever lay ahead, determined to uncover the secrets of the past and bring peace to her family. The days following their discoveries were filled with a tense anticipation. Eliza and Dr. McAllister delved deeper into the history of Isabella Blackwood and Alexander Fraser, uncovering a web of secrets and lies that had been buried for over a century. The more they learned, the more they realized the peril they faced. One evening, as they pored over old documents in Eliza's study, Dr. McAllister seemed unusually quiet, his brow furrowed in deep thought. Eliza noticed his distraction, but dismissed it as fatigue from their relentless research. "Look at this," Eliza said, pointing to a particularly revealing letter. Isabella wrote to Alexander just days before her death, accusing him of betrayal. She believed he was involved in some dark dealings. Dr. McAllister glanced at the letter, his expression unreadable. "Interesting. This could be the link we need to understand why your mother was so determined to communicate with Isabella." Eliza nodded, her mind racing with the implications. If Alexander was involved in her death, he might have left clues. "We need to follow up on any connections he had." They worked late into the night, compiling a list of Alexander's known associates and locations he frequented. As the clock struck midnight, Eliza decided to call it a night. "We've made good progress," she said, stretching. "Let's continue tomorrow. We need to be rested if we're going to track down these leads." Dr. McAllister agreed, but there was a strange look in his eyes as he gathered his things. "I'll see you in the morning," he said, his voice subdued. Eliza watched him leave, a nagging feeling of unease settling in her stomach. She shook it off, attributing it to the stress and fatigue of their intense investigation. The next morning, Eliza woke early, eager to resume their search. She made her way to Dr. McAllister's flat, but when she knocked on the door, there was no answer. Concerned, she tried again, louder this time. Still no response. Worry gnawed at her as she peered through the window. The flat was empty, with no sign of Dr. McAllister. Panic rising, she decided to head back to her study, hoping he had left a message. As she entered her study, her heart sank. The place had been ransacked, papers and books strewn everywhere. And the amulet was missing. "No," she whispered, frantically searching through the mess. He wouldn't. A cold realization hit her. Dr. McAllister had betrayed her. He had taken the amulet, possibly believing it was too dangerous to leave in her hands, or intending to use it for his own purposes. Eliza's mind raced. She needed to find him before he did something irreversible. The betrayal cut deep, but there was no time to dwell on it. She had to act quickly. Recalling their list of Alexander Fraser's known haunts, Eliza decided to start her search there. She grabbed her bag, ensuring she had her notes and a flashlight, and headed out. The first few locations yielded nothing, but Eliza refused to give up. As night fell, she arrived at an old, abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the city, one of the last places on their list. The mansion was decrepit, its once grand facade now crumbling and overgrown with ivy. Eliza approached cautiously, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. The place exuded an aura of malevolence. She pushed open the heavy wooden door, the hinges creaking loudly in the silence. The interior was dark and cold, shadows dancing in the corners as her flashlight flickered. "Dr. McAllister?" she called out, her voice echoing through the empty halls. No response. Eliza pressed on, her heart pounding. She navigated the maze of corridors, each step filled with trepidation. Finally, she reached a large, dimly lit room. And there, standing before an altar similar to the one in the vaults, was Dr. McAllister. "James," she said, her voice a mix of anger and betrayal. "What are you doing?" He turned, the amulet glowing ominously in his hand. "Eliza, you don't understand. This power, it can unlock secrets we can't even imagine. I had to take it. You've put us all in danger," Eliza replied, her voice shaking with emotion. "We need to stop this before it's too late." Dr. McAllister's eyes softened for a moment, but then hardened with resolve. "I'm sorry, Eliza, but this is bigger than both of us." Eliza knew she had to act quickly. The stakes had never been higher, and the danger was palpable. She steeled herself for what was to come, determined to stop Dr. McAllister and end the nightmare that had begun with her mother's diary. Eliza stood in the doorway, her heart racing as she faced Dr. McAllister. The amulet in his hand cast an eerie glow, illuminating the determination in his eyes. The room felt charged with an oppressive energy, the air thick with anticipation. "James, please," Eliza said, stepping forward cautiously. "You don't have to do this. We can find another way to uncover the truth." Dr. McAllister shook his head, his grip tightening around the amulet. "It's too late, Eliza. The power of the amulet is too great to ignore. We must use it to understand the secrets of the past, no matter the cost." Eliza's mind raced, trying to think of a way to reach him. "Think about what my mother went through. She tried to use the amulet, and it brought nothing but pain and death. Do you really want to risk that?" Dr. McAllister hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. But then he lifted the amulet, chanting an incantation Eliza recognized from her mother's diary. The room seemed to darken, the shadows growing deeper and more menacing. "No!" Eliza shouted, lunging forward. She grabbed at the amulet, but a powerful force threw her back, slamming her against the wall. Pain shot through her, but she forced herself to stand, her determination unwavering. She needed to stop him. Summoning all her strength, Eliza began to chant the counter-ritual she had memorized from the diary. The words flowed from her lips, filled with a desperate urgency. The air around her crackled with energy, the two conflicting rituals clashing violently. Dr. McAllister's eyes widened as he realized what she was doing. "Eliza, stop. You don't know what you're meddling with." But Eliza continued, her voice growing stronger. The amulet's glow intensified, pulsing with a blinding light. The ground beneath them shook, and the oppressive presence in the room seemed to grow angrier, more frantic. With a final, resounding chant, Eliza completed the counter-ritual. The amulet's light exploded in a brilliant flash, and then everything went dark. Silence fell, the oppressive energy dissipating as if it had never been. Eliza lay on the cold stone floor, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She felt a hand on her shoulder and looked up to see Dr. McAllister, his face pale and stricken. "Eliza, I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice filled with regret. She nodded weakly, too exhausted to respond. Together, they struggled to their feet, the room around them eerily silent. The amulet lay on the ground, its glow completely gone. "We need to destroy it," Eliza said, her voice hoarse. "It's too dangerous to keep." Dr. McAllister agreed, and they carefully placed the amulet in a lead-lined box, sealing it shut. They decided to bury it deep within the vaults, where it would be safe from prying eyes. As they made their way back through the dark corridors, Eliza felt a sense of relief mixed with lingering sorrow. The journey had taken a heavy toll, but she had finally uncovered the truth about her mother and Isabella. Standing at the entrance to the vaults, Eliza turned to Dr. McAllister. "We've been through so much. I just hope we can find peace now." Dr. McAllister nodded, his expression solemn. "We will. We've done what we had to do." Eliza looked out at the city of Edinburgh, bathed in the soft light of dawn. The shadows of the past had been confronted, and while the scars would remain, she felt a newfound strength within her. "We'll document everything," she said, "so others can learn from our mistakes." Dr. McAllister placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will, and we'll make sure the truth is known." Together, they left the vaults behind, the weight of their journey heavy on their shoulders, but the promise of a brighter future ahead. Eliza knew there would always be more mysteries to uncover, more secrets to reveal. But for now, she was content to let the past rest, knowing she had done all she could to honor her mother's memory. The early morning sun cast a warm glow over Edinburgh, dispelling the lingering chill from the night. Eliza and Dr. McAllister stood at the entrance to the vaults, the lead-lined box containing the amulet securely in their hands. The weight of their journey hung heavy on them, but they knew their task was not yet complete. "We need to make sure this stays buried," Eliza said, her voice steady. "It can't be allowed to cause any more harm." Dr. McAllister nodded in agreement. "There's an old section of the vaults, long forgotten and inaccessible to the public. It's the perfect place." They descended once more into the darkness, navigating the labyrinthine tunnels with practiced ease. The air grew colder and damper as they ventured deeper, but this time, the oppressive presence was gone. Eliza felt a sense of closure, knowing that the malevolent force had been banished. Finally, they reached the designated spot, a narrow, hidden chamber deep within the vaults. The walls were lined with ancient stones, and the air was thick with the weight of history. It was the perfect resting place for the amulet. Dr. McAllister set down the box, and together they began to dig a small pit in the corner of the chamber. The work was exhausting, but they were driven by a shared determination to see this through. When the pit was deep enough, they carefully lowered the box into it and covered it with the cold, damp earth. "It's done," Eliza said, her voice filled with relief. "We've buried it for good." They stood in silence for a moment, reflecting on the significance of their actions. The amulet's power was now safely contained, and the spirits it had disturbed could finally rest. As they made their way back to the surface, Eliza felt a sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long and harrowing, but she had uncovered the truth about her mother and Isabella. She had faced her fears and emerged stronger for it. Back in the daylight, Eliza and Dr. McAllister returned to her study, where they began to document their findings. They detailed every step of their journey, from the discovery of the diary to the final confrontation in the mansion. It was a meticulous process, but they knew it was essential to ensure that others could learn from their experience. "We'll publish this," Eliza said, her eyes bright with determination. "People need to know the truth about the amulet and the dangers it poses." Dr. McAllister agreed, his expression thoughtful. "And we need to honor your mother's memory. She was trying to do the right thing, even if it cost her everything." Eliza nodded, a pang of sadness in her heart. Yes, she deserves to be remembered for her courage. As they worked, Eliza felt a sense of closure. The shadows of the past had been confronted, and the secrets of her family were finally out in the open. It was a bittersweet victory, but one she would cherish. When they finished documenting everything, Eliza leaned back in her chair, a weary smile on her face. "We did it, James. We really did it." Dr. McAllister smiled back, a glint of pride in his eyes. "Yes, we did. And now we can move forward." The days that followed were filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. Eliza continued her work as a historian, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew there would always be more mysteries to uncover, more secrets to reveal. But for now, she was content to let the past rest, knowing she had done all she could to honor her mother's legacy. As she looked out at the bustling streets of Edinburgh, Eliza felt a sense of peace. The journey had been difficult, but it had brought her closer to understanding herself and her family. And for that, she was grateful. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Eliza and Dr. McAllister's meticulous documentation of their journey through the vaults and their encounters with the supernatural was received with great interest by the academic community. Their work was published in a respected historical journal, garnering attention and acclaim. Eliza felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she saw the published article. The truth about her mother and Isabella was now known, and the dangers of the amulet had been brought to light. It was a fitting tribute to her mother's memory, and it brought a sense of closure to the painful chapters of her family's history. Despite the acclaim, Eliza's thoughts often drifted back to the vaults and the secrets they held. One evening, as she sat in her study, she received a letter. The envelope was old and worn, the handwriting unfamiliar. With a sense of curiosity, she opened it. "Dear Eliza, your work has uncovered truths long buried and brought peace to restless spirits. But there are more secrets yet to be revealed. If you wish to continue your journey, meet me at the old library on George IV Bridge at midnight. Sincerely, a friend." Eliza's heart raced as she read the letter. The prospect of another mystery, another journey into the past, both excited and unnerved her. She knew she couldn't ignore it. That night, she made her way to the old library, its grand facade looming in the moonlight. She entered cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silent halls. As the clock struck midnight, she saw a figure standing by the large oak desk in the reading room. "Hello," Eliza called out, her voice steady despite her nerves. The figure turned, revealing a tall, elderly man with a kindly face. "Eliza Blackwood, I presume?" "Yes," she replied, stepping closer. "And you are?" "Call me Robert," the man said with a warm smile. "I've been following your work. Your discovery of the amulet and your subsequent actions were remarkable." Eliza nodded, curiosity piqued. "Why did you write to me? What more is there to uncover?" Robert gestured for her to sit. The amulet was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. There are other artifacts, other secrets tied to the history of Edinburgh and beyond. Your mother's work was just the beginning. Eliza's eyes widened. "You mean there are more like the amulet?" "Yes," Robert confirmed. "And they are equally, if not more, dangerous. But with your skills and determination, I believe you can help uncover and neutralize them." The weight of the revelation settled on Eliza. The thought of another dangerous journey filled her with a mix of excitement and dread. But she knew she couldn't turn away from the challenge. "What do I need to do?" she asked, determination in her voice. Robert handed her a small, leather-bound journal. This belonged to another historian, one who dedicated his life to uncovering these artifacts. "It will guide you to the next piece of the puzzle. But be warned, the path will be fraught with danger." Eliza took the journal, feeling its weight in her hands. "Thank you, Robert. I won't let you down." As she left the library, Eliza felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey ahead would be challenging, but she was ready. The secrets of the past were waiting to be uncovered, and she was determined to reveal them. Back in her study, Eliza opened the journal, its pages filled with cryptic notes and maps. The adventure that lay ahead promised to be even more perilous than the last, but Eliza knew she was prepared. She had faced the shadows of the past and emerged stronger for it. The legacy of her mother and the mysteries of Edinburgh would continue to guide her. And with each step, she would bring light to the darkest corners of history, one secret at a time. If you enjoyed unraveling this, you're in for another spine-tingling tale. Click the video on your screen to discover more eerie stories from the Phantom Story Society, where history's darkest secrets come to life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Until next time, stay curious and beware of the shadows.